I'd rather create something that others criticise than create nothing and criticise others.
If you have high quality product behind the bar, it's like a weapon.
It's not about the figures, it's about who those figures are.
The Hospodpreneurs Podcast.
I'm going to drink this beer.
Yeah, let's crack them.
With James Henderson.
Hello and welcome to episode 72 of the Hospodpreneurs Podcast. Contemplating the digital change that swept the hotel industry during the GFC, Stevan Premutico picked up a pen and scribbled on a napkin in a cafe in Chelsea. That was the day that Dimmi was born. After revolutionising the Australian restaurant industry, the popular reservation platform was acquired by TripAdvisor in 2015. Stevan is one of Australia's leading tech entrepreneurs and is back at it again to launch me&u, a tap, order and pay application designed to offer a faster, better and easier way for customers to order and pay. This episode was recorded live at the podcast booth at Global Table in Melbourne.
Hello and welcome to the show, Stevan.
James, good to be here, buddy.
Mate, it's a pleasure to have you on. The first question that I normally like to ask on the episode is I ask a crazy hospitality story, but I'm going to twist that just a little bit today. So I'd actually like to ask you what an exceptional hospitality experience looks like to you.
It's a bit of an emotional start, mate. I'm an Italian kid, so I grew up around food all my life. And the best moments in life always happened around food. So it's every Sunday rocking up to my nonna's house for a bowl of pasta, glass of wine, family and friends, and just that's the ultimate hospitality. You feel welcomed, food, stories, conversations, laughter, tears. That's the childhood I was brought into. So that's the upbringing I had. And I think that's from where my deep passion and love for this industry was born.
Fantastic. I love that. And a beautiful answer. I don't want to lead you into the answer to the next question, but why do you do what you do?
It's a question I ask myself often, mate. Well, there's a couple of tough things to do in life, and one of the hardest is definitely being a restaurateur. I'd say that one of the other hardest things to do is to do startups. They're both what I would consider to be impossibly difficult gigs. 99% of startups don't make it, as unfortunately you know. 20% of restaurants that open this year won't be here at the end of the year. So both of them are crazy, and you don't do them for any other reason other than you are deeply, deeply motivated and passionate about making something better. And, as restaurateurs, we want to see people walk out with a smile on their face. For me, as a startup guy, I don't know, I look at this industry and a lot of my family and friends and people that I admire are operators. And it moves me to think about the hours, the blood, the sweat, the tears, the mental health issues, just the fragile state that this industry is in right now. And something doesn't stack up. So I did Dimmi, and Dimmi was a roller coaster ride of a lifetime. Lots of fucking ups, lots of downs, really tough ride. And I got out the other side of that and I took some time off because I needed a break. I said to myself, I will never, ever, ever do startup again. But I'm back here doing startup again because I think collectively, and I say collectively, the team that I've got around me here at me&u, I think we can help to make this industry better. And that's very deep in my heart. So the reason why I'm back is because I love this industry and I want to use tech to make this industry better, more sustainable, and really better for the guys who run restaurants and cafes across this country. And I think we can do that.
I want to open that up a little bit more, but sort of touch on a bit more about your post-Dimmi experience. So I understand you did the Camino de Santiago and that you played around with a lot of ideas. I've read 34 ideas that you workshopped on that walk, and a lot of people go on it for a spiritual awakening. Were you a little bit lost after Dimmi, or was that the next step for you?
I think it's a weird thing because when I first started Dimmi, I thought that was going to be the rest of my life. That's how deeply passionate I was about what I was doing. And then I think at some point along that journey, you realize, well, I certainly realized that it was a step to somewhere bigger and somewhere greater. So when TripAdvisor came along and knocked on a door and they acquired the business, yes, I was scared. I wasn't scared about what I was going to do next. I was more scared about what they would do with the business because it was my baby. I think when I left it in the hands of a great company. And then I turned the lights off. I walked out the door, and the next day I jumped on a flight and I went from Sydney to Spain and I did the Camino Santiago literally the next day. So a 30-day walk, 1,000 kilometers. And just for context, I don't walk. Like if I'm walking from here down the street, I'm catching an Uber. Like I'm not a walker. But at the end of my Dimmi ride, I was so battered and bruised. My heart was destroyed. It's a startup war story, right? You're working 20-hour days, 6.5 days a week, right? It's tough. So I think at the end of that ride, I had no creative energy to think. I couldn't be inspired by anything else. So what I knew was I needed to stop. I needed to push pause. I needed to give myself some time to think. And the Camino was the absolute best place that I could do that because I had no distractions. So I left my phone behind. It was just me and my backpack. And it became this fascinating journey for 30 days, a self-discovery journey for me, where I could leave stuff behind and I could just be focused on the future. And I think I realized one really important thing on that walk, and that was that, yes, I said I was never gonna do this startup thing again, but I think during the Camino, I realized that I'm here on this planet to use tech to make this world a bit better, and in particular to try and make this industry a bit better. So that's where I landed. From there, I stumbled across a whole bunch of ideas that I was deeply passionate about. And then when I really unpicked all of those, the 34 ideas, this was one that kept me awake at night constantly. And that was it. I picked it, I backed it, we started, and now it's full steam ahead. So I think that this one, in me&u, can make a difference to this industry in Australia and across the planet.
What's that difference that you believe that me&u is capable of in the industry?
In terms of what we do, it's really simple. So me&u is a new and hopefully a much better way for customers to order and pay. If you think about the problems in our industry today, there's a couple of really evident problems. So the first is that the ordering and payment experience in the hospitality sector is out of date. So the idea being that you rock up at a restaurant and you've got 100 items on a menu or 300 items in a wine list is antiquated. The idea being that I've got to stand in a queue to order a beer is antiquated. The idea being that I've got to put my hand up and wait for a waiter to finally turn around and see me to get attention to place an order is nuts. And the worst of them all is the 8 minutes at the end of the meal when I just want to go, that we've then got to try and get a waiter's attention to get the bill, and then the socially awkward moment of how we're going to split the bill. So that's where we started. Let's make the customer experience better. The second part of the same equation is we're in an industry right now that I think is more fragile than it's ever been. You've got labour costs in Australia that are the highest on the planet. We've got the delivery guys that are taking a serious chunk of the industry and taking people out of restaurants, and people are eating our great meals at home on couches. And you've got profit margins that are the worst they've ever been. And I'll add to that, I think you've got most operators in this country who are scared about the next couple of months because of the adjustment that everyone's just making now to their labour. So I think you've got an industry that's very fragile. So the big bit that I want to do and make a difference here is that what I know for sure is that when a customer orders through me&u, they spend 10 to 15% more. So immediately spend is higher, number one. And number two is there is a material opportunity here for me&u to play a role in shifting the role of the front of house team. So rather than a waiter being somebody who's collecting orders and collecting payment, my dream is that waiter evolves to being somebody who's hosting and serving and building rapport and relationship, and we can take care of the lower value stuff like orders and payment. And then you can run a better front of house team, a more efficient front of house team, and allow the front of house team to focus on the magic that really creates hospitality.
That's a very interesting way to explain that last bit in particular, because a lot of technologically driven businesses that come into this space are just racing to the bottom for cost. They're just looking to get the cost down for the operator, and they don't understand that hospitality experience. But the fact that you've mentioned the host as a key role in that operation demonstrates how deep your understanding is from a customer and operational perspective.
Thank you, James. It's a very kind observation. I think that I've surrounded myself with a bunch of people and a bunch of family and friends who are deeply connected in this industry. So, I have a deep empathy for this space. There is a perception that a platform like me&u is here to eliminate the waiter. That's a fundamentally flawed view. And that's a view from somebody who doesn't truly know how to make this work. The waiter the host, the front of house team, is critical to a successful and happy experience. But the role's got to change because the industry can't survive the way it is at the moment. We're too fully loaded. So I want to remove some of the friction and evolve the host to be a host, to serve, to build rapport, to upsell. I had one restaurateur tell me this, and this was in the concept stage of me&u. He said, I leave $20 on the table for every customer. I said, what do you mean? And he goes, because I can't afford to have enough waiters on the floor, they can't go back and ask if the customer wants, a dessert or another glass of wine. It's crazy. Customers want to spend more. We're just not equipped to allow customers to push a button and to order another glass of wine or to have the waiter be able to go back to the table. So if we can remove them from the low value stuff, suddenly there's more time to allow the upsell to happen.
What's your perspective then on the art of the front of house professional?
Well, let's be brutally honest right now, and the unfortunate reality of the significant increase in labour costs in this country, the new policies and the rationalisation, means that a waiter today is not a waiter. A waiter is a runner. Waiters right now are collecting orders and they're collecting payment and they're running food. I want to evolve that to be a place where a waiter becomes the host and they can have a deep connection with customers, because that is the art of hospitality, and that's ultimately what customers go into restaurants to achieve. The second thing I would say to that is I do truly believe there is a new service standard, and the new service standard is that because of platforms and apps like Uber Taxi, customers are conditioned to be able to push a button and a car arrives at the front of the house. And at the end of the ride, just get up and go. So they're getting into our industry and they're saying, hold on a second, why do I have to wait 10 minutes to get a menu? Why do I have to wait 8 minutes at the end to pay a bill? The customer expectation, the service standard is completely changed because of the experience we're having in other verticals and other industries like Uber.
As someone who has worked across all of the roles that we're discussing, I've been a runner, I've been a host, I've been a bartender, I've been a manager, I've done all of those things. So it's interesting to hear your perspective on how this particular technology can shape that experience. My personal opinion on the front of house role in the majority of venues, the top end is very different to what I'm about to say. The majority of venues lack high quality hospitality. They lack that personal.
It's impossible to recruit. You tell me any owner out there right now who's not desperately looking for front of house people. And here's the crazy thing. Somebody walks in through the door, you're desperate for somebody, you take them, they start a shift for you, you train them, you finally get them up and running, and maximum 6 months later they're gone. It's a tough industry, and the reality is that people are not finishing school these days and saying, you know what, my ambition is to be a waiter. So it's getting harder and harder to find good, skilled front of house people. If the role of the waiter is less about knowing every single wine on the list, knowing every single food item on the list, and it's more about customer service and hospitality, then suddenly we can cast the blanket a whole lot wider, and our ability to recruit just good people becomes a whole lot easier, I hope.
I do hope so too. Maybe my perspective is a bit cynical, but as someone who is skilled in that space, particularly as a host, whenever I go into venues, that's something that I do is I explore hospitality venues. I don't have much confidence in a lot of front of house teams in being able to provide that experience. And it is very transactional already.
Yeah.
Do you think then with something like this, the industry is going to be forced to be better at hosting?
So I'd start by saying that I absolutely agree with your observation, and that is that the service standard generally across the board is not where it can be. So I do believe that technology can help supplement that to allow the host to be a better host. It is fact right now that most cafes, restaurants and operators are running 1 or 2 less people on the floor because of the wage costs, right? So customers are waiting for longer, it's taking longer to pay bills. So there's this massive disconnect between customers wanting to get in and get out and the labor costs of a business. So tech is not going to replace it, but it can definitely supplement it to help enrich the overall experience. If I can just give you one very simple example. You go into a venue 5 times a month, and the brutal reality is that the manager, the maitre d', the waiter is very unlikely to know you. The beautiful thing that we do with me&u is that now when you go into a venue and you tap, the venue now knows that you're a VIP. They know that your name is James. They know that you're a vegan. So if you can start to play that out, that is a great example of how tech can really help to enrich the experience. Suddenly, as a customer, you're more impressed. You're getting a better experience. It's a little subtle bit, but when somebody comes up and says, James, here's your coffee, it makes you feel special and warm, and that's ultimately what hospitality is about. So tech can help make those little moments more magical.
I can absolutely see how that's the case. I believe it will lift the standard across the board with these sort of technological innovations and even force the top end to be better. It's probably better for the majority of venues to have these sorts of digital interactions because it actually cuts down on the number of interactions that a staff member makes with a guest because their staff aren't incredibly qualified. So it's probably going to be better for a lot of venues anyway. But on the top end, will it force them out or will it force them to be better?
Different applications serve different purposes, James. And me&u plays in the mid-market. me&u's never going to, definitely not for the next year or so, apply to a Vue de Monde. In that experience, I go there because of the experience. In the majority of the rest of the market, convenience is key to the experience. So me&u sits across cafes, mid-market restaurants, fast casual, QSRs, pubs, but it's not on the pinnacle. That's not where we play.
Steven, I'm going to change speed here. I want to ask you about what you're learning or exploring at the moment.
Wow. I'd say two things in particular. So number one is that when a customer places an order, and I'm going to give you an example here, how do we encourage that customer to spend more? So it's a very simple thing. McDonald's has proven it with the would you like fries with that. And I think what we're finding is that with an app, you have this significant ability to get customers to spend more. So the big thing we're playing with is what are the upsells, modifiers, and recommendations that we're making to a customer at every step in the journey to encourage them to add salmon to their salad or to add a bucket of fries to their burger. There's gold in that. So it's early days and there's a long way for us to go, but we're already seeing significant improvements in spend. Number two, this is kind of just deep to the heart of the business, is how do you grow a fast growing business? And for me personally, is how do you be across every element of the organization and allow the business to grow and to grow quickly? You know, this business is going to grow at a rapid rate faster than Dimmi ever grew. So as a founder of the business, the single biggest thing that I've learned is that I just need exceptional people around me. And I'm very blessed that I've been fortunate to have attracted a good bunch of people, and I just got to let these guys get on and create magic. My role is to create the vision and the future and allow the team to hopefully do some of the best work of their life.
I really like the positive answer, and I like to focus on a lot of positivity and that very much a growth-oriented lens to look through things. But in this particular case, I'm going to flip it. I'd like to ask you, who tells you when you're wrong?
Oh, my mum all the time.
Yeah.
That's a good question. So what I would say is that we have to be very careful as founders, because I think we have an ability to be so obsessed over something that you can take it beyond reason and you can keep going with an original idea even if the market is not there, right? So I'd say that there's probably two ways that I make sure that I'm surrounded by people or things that slap me over the head and wake me up from time to time. So number one is I've always believed deeply in creating an exceptional board of directors and people around you. So I'm exceptionally fortunate to have a cracker of a advisory board at me&u, some of the best sort of tech and hospo people on the planet. And number two is it is brutal, but the person that will always tell you when you're wrong is the customer, whether that's a restaurateur or users themselves. So I think my job is to try and spend 20% of my life in front of restaurants, owners, managers, and customers. And let me give you a very specific example of that is that when we first started me&u, I thought we were going to be a tablet solution. So I thought you would rock up to a restaurant, the tablet would be on the table, and you would order through a tablet. That's the belief that I had. A couple of months in, I started to get the sentiment from customers that they didn't feel comfortable with that. They didn't trust giving a tablet the payment details. They didn't like the fact that they were touching somebody else's screen for hygienic reasons. Owners hated it because they had to work out where to charge these bloody things. It just didn't make sense. But that was where I started. So I could have been arrogant and kept going with that vision, or you've got to stop and you've got to rethink and you've got to pivot. And I think that's the art of any founder, is to be bold-headed and to have a big vision, but to be nimble and agile in how you get there. And we quickly moved away from tablets and realized that mobile was clearly where it was at. I knew that was where we're going to be in the long term, but I think what I realized was tablets didn't have a role to play for us at all in the short term.
And that the technology was obviously there to execute that at this point. What innovations or innovative techniques did you see over that course of the Dimmi roller coaster?
So I think the one thing that I've seen evolve over the past 10 years, whilst I've been a partner to this industry, well, hopefully a deeply embedded partner to this industry, is that there has become this exceptional distrust and distaste for tech companies. And I think there's a bunch of tech companies that have done bad by this industry. So I think you've got a whole bunch of operators who are burnt and they're scared. And what I would say to that is that that's probably the single biggest observation, having been there, taking some time off and now back again for a second crack. I think in the way that we've tried to set up me&u, we've always tried to look at this, number one, first and foremost, through the lens of an operator, solve that problem first. Don't worry about the customer, the end user, make restaurateurs happy first. And I think that's a very unique approach, because I think most tech companies always try and make the customer happy. So I think we've been very bold in our desire to solve the industry issue, improve profitability for the industry, and that's what we're laser focused on doing. And I think the industry has been burnt. There are a bunch of people that are scarred, and my observation is tech can be amazing. Tech can be the answer to the problems in this industry, and deep in my heart, I want to prove that technology, if it's done properly, can be the answer to some of the problems that we have.
So how can startups and tech companies who have solutions to these problems deal with that environment? Is it just a harder sell? Is it harder to just get your foot in the door?
I think you've really got to look at some of the principles of what you stand for. By way of a couple of examples, when a customer uses me&u, we've taken a very strong position that we share that data with the owner. So that's a very fundamental position that we believe deeply in. Number two is that when a customer makes a payment, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going through me&u. We could hold on to that money for weeks and collect a whole bunch of money on it, interest on it. We don't believe that's fair. We pay the money to the operator the moment we receive it. So I think from the very beginning, we've tried to take a stance of principle and try to look at this as a solution to the industry first. Do what is right, do what is fair. And I think if you start from that position and you truly try to solve a problem, a deeply rooted problem, and you do it with a deep service and care approach, because that is what this industry is all about, then I think you can be successful. That is the advice that I'd give to anyone else who's trying to do something in this space.
Fantastic. Stevan, I'd like to know how you handle competitors in the same space. I've got a couple of other questions along this same sort of line. So I guess the angle that I'm looking for is, if you have a budget to acquire competitors, should you?
So let me talk about competitors for a sec. I think one of the scariest moments of my life at Dimmi was when OpenTable tried to buy us, and that didn't happen. And then the big billion-dollar competitor came in and tried to squash us. It was a big learning for me there, and that is they threw everything at us, but they didn't touch us. They didn't win any of our customers. I think this industry is deeply connected to people and to partners who care about their business and want to help them be successful. So I think if you're in it to make money, if you're in it to win, this is not the right industry to be in. Like, this industry is loyal to people who do good by them. I definitely learned that quickly. And I think when I look at me&u right now, I knew that the day that we started and we publicized what we're doing at me&u, that a competitor or a bunch of competitors was going to start and copycats were going to start the next day. I knew that. I don't think that as a founder or as anybody out there that you can be focused on the competition. I think you have to be bold in your vision. You have to go bloody fast, and you've got to be so deeply connected and so deeply rooted in what the customers want that you know that if you're innovating and you're running fast and you're obsessed about what the customer wants, truly no competitor should really matter. So go fast, listen deeply to your customers, and have a deeply rooted connection with your customer base. Competitors will always come and go, but be laser focused on what you're doing. Don't be distracted, and ultimately I think you will find success.
Fantastic. So to then move on to the next question in that space, if you're in a position for those listening who have the budget to acquire competitors, should they just follow what you described there and keep going?
Well, it's always an interesting one. Like, I think land grab is really, really important. So if you think that a competitor can give you talent or it can give you customers, then sure, you clearly need to look at it and size it up. It may be a great way to get a year ahead of the curve. I haven't done acquisitions in the past. I don't typically believe in them personally. I believe in being laser focused in your own ambitions and going quickly and investing the money that you've got that is typically very limited in a startup to win market directly yourself.
What have you found to be the most valuable resource in learning about the hospitality industry and the greater hospitality supply chain and network?
Just spend time with them. This is an industry of people that are so deeply passionate, and just absorb yourself in it. It's not an industry that you're going to win by sitting behind the computer and trying to conceptualize ideas. You've got to be a part of the fabric. So spend your life with customers, with owners, with operators. Be a part of the fabric. That's without question the single biggest piece of advice I could give to anybody is be part of the fabric. Don't be somebody who's looking in. Go and feel it, absorb it. Have the deep conversations about what's keeping an operator awake at night.
Ultimately, where do you want to be?
Where do I want to be? That's a big question. I'd love to say that in 5 years from today, that me&u has made this industry better. The customer experience is friction-free. A customer rocks up, they tap, they get the menu, they order, they go. Like, it's beautiful, it's effortless, it's experience-rich, and it's easy. I'd love to say that we're across the planet and that I could turn around to my kids and say, I was a part of that. In some small way, I helped make that industry a bit more sustainable, a bit better, a bit more profitable, and better. That's my goal.
What's your next step in achieving that?
Make people happy. As any founder, you've always got two sets of people you want to make happy and inspired. The first is the team. We've got an exceptional, young, talented, passionate team. So keeping them motivated, inspired and happy is challenge number one. Number two is we're early in our life. So we've got some exceptional clients. We need to make sure that we're satisfying those guys and they're happy. So they're seeing spend increase, they're seeing customers are loving it, and that the front of house team is being brought in and it's operationally seamless. I think if we can do those two things, me&u becomes an unstoppable business. So they're the two immediate things that I'm focused on: making our team happy and inspired, and making customers and operators love what we do.
Stevan, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. Thank you very much.
James, great to be here, mate. Thank you.
The show today was produced by the in-house audio team at Hospopreneurs, led by Jake Olver. Voiceovers were by Angus Brennan. To learn more, head to hospopreneurs.com.